It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, and finally, after months of waiting, it is Grizmas. Merry Grizmas, one and all. It comes around one time every year. It is opening night for the Memphis Grizzlies. They take on the Utah Jazz. Damichael Cole is there on the ground in Utah. He'll be at the game tonight. We'll talk about our season predictions, and we'll preview tonight's contest coming up on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, and again, it is a special episode of Locked On Grizzlies because it is opening night. Merry Grizmas, one and all. Damichael Cole is my co-host. He is the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He is on the ground in Utah, boots on the ground. He's going to be in the building for Grizzlies opening night out in Utah. Very excited for him, very excited to have him with us, and very excited to have you, dear listener, dear viewer, with us as well. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Friendly reminder that we do have a team newsletter live now. Team newsletter, Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. You can subscribe today. Never miss a single episode of Locked On Grizzlies, past and present, are included there. One-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage. I'm handling the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter for us here at the podcast. Right to your inbox. You can sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day each and every time it drops with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Speaking of free, we're free and available wherever you get podcasts. As proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Check us out, both audio and video. Make us a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. Damichael, hopefully it is nice there in Utah for you. Very excited that you're back traveling. We talked about that on yesterday's show. And very excited that it is once again Grizmas. Merry Grizmas to you, my friend.
Merry Christmas, Joe. Merry Christmas. Very exciting part of the year, as you just said. And I've been waiting for this, finally getting back on the plane. And, sometimes I sleep when I'm on the plane. Sometimes I watch some Netflix stuff. And sometimes I just, kind of game plan, right? What Grizzly story ideas am I going to come up with while we're out of town, while we're on the road? Like I said, a lot of my best stories and ideas often come when we're on the road. So a lot of that, but you know what? It's a fun time of the year, and we'll talk about this game a little later. This ain't just a check mark game right here, but we'll get to it. Fun part of the year, though, for sure. Joe, been a long time, ready to get into it.
Excited for you, partner. You deserve to be on the road as a beat reporter. You should be out there following the team, so that's great. I'm happy for you. It's going to be good stuff following you at Damichael C all year long. The Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here with us on Locked On Grizzlies. We're very fortunate. Damichael, this is a previews and predictions episode of the podcast, and we are going to do just that, starting off with some awards predictions. So the Grizzlies have gotten some buzz awards-wise. Ja Morant and the Revenge Tour being in the top 5 and MVP voting. That's a pretty popular choice in terms of a bold prediction. If Memphis has another season where they're in the top seeds in the Western Conference, we'll get to our season predictions later on in the show. It's likely that Taylor Jenkins will be in that conversation. But I'm going to go a little bit off the beaten path with my award prediction.
What you got up your sleeve, Joe? What you got up your sleeve?
And technically, I guess if you want to say being gifted the award, he's already received it a couple of years ago. But Desmond Bane is going to be the most improved player this year. That is my bold Memphis Grizzlies award prediction. And here's why. Because this is something, and I wrote this over at Grizzlead. I'm a contributor for Grizzlead this season. And I wrote this for my article this week in my predictions post, talking about this reality. Desmond Bane, after his 4th season in the NBA, compared with James Harden after his 4th season in the NBA. Now, Harden was 23 and Bane's 25, or was 25 at the end of that season. That's important to point out. But per 100 possessions, according to Basketball Reference, both James Harden and Desmond Bane averaged 33.8 points, 100 possessions, Both averaged exactly 6.3 rebounds. Bane posted 7.8 assists to Harden's 7.6. And while Harden is, of course, better at getting to the free throw line, I feel like most folks are aware of that follow basketball at the professional level, their true shooting percentage was identical. Bane was a better three-point shooter in season 4 than Harden was, 38.1 to 36.8. Bane destroyed the Beard in 2-point attempts, 53.6% to 47.7%. What does all this mean? This means that these two have very comparable games if you've never thought about it like that. Again, the main difference being the free throw disparity, but they both do similar things. They score at all 3 levels. They can rebound. They can get assists. And with all of this talk of a new look offense partner, more possessions, more opportunities for Bane to be that lead facilitator, that lead guard on the floor, Desmond Bane's going to have lots of opportunities to see his role expand, and I think that is going to lead to him. Again, I think Victor Wembanyama is the current betting favorite. If Wembanyama wins, we've completely lost the point. You could argue.
I hate the way they view that award, but
you could argue that Morant winning it 2 years ago killed it, right?
Yeah.
But so maybe this is a lesser example of that, but I really do think that Desmond Bane could make that leap into all-star status. And if he does that for a good Grizzlies team, which we'll talk more about here in a moment, I think that puts him in the mix for most improved player. So that's my bold award prediction. Desmond Bane, most improved player of the year.
I like that. And here's the thing, because I get your point about, the most improved, and some people are going to say, oh, Des was averaging 20 this last year, or whatever the case may be. But you have to remember last season, when Desmond Bane was putting up over 5 assists and 5 boards and 20-plus points in all these games, a lot of people were saying, oh, they're empty stats. So if you translate that over to we'll predict the records later, but if you translate that over to winning basketball, Joe, I think you're definitely on to something. But I'm going to keep it simple here. I mentioned some 6th man of the year talk last year. On the last episode, but I'm just going to keep it simple. And Zach Edey, rookie of the year. And I think some people have a dull outlook on this. Like, he is kind of, if you look at the FanDuel odds, he is kind of a runaway favorite, in a way. But I don't think this will be a runaway. I think there are certain rookies, I don't know what these guys' count stats will be, but like Alex Sarr is going to get a great opportunity in Washington. He's going to, I think defensively, he's going to be very impactful from day one, and the offense will be whatever it is. But he's going to get a nice opportunity. Reed Shepherd, what he's going to have going in his favor. They're going to say, oh, he's playing, winning basketball, and his count stats may not be the equivalent of Zach Edey's, but his efficiency will probably be better and things like that. So, of course, Reed Shepherd's going to somewhere factor into the conversation. People love his game, especially if it gets to a point where they say, look, Fred VanVleet, we like you, but this is his job.
As long as he's not playing the Oakland Grizzlies, he'll be fine.
As long as he's not playing the Oakland Grizzlies, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm just going to keep it simple. I think the big man has a very good opportunity here in Memphis. We can't say it enough. He's going to be put in position to start. You have guys who want to get him the basketball. This is not a situation where guys are saying, oh, he's a rookie center. He'll get his touches when he gets them. Ja wants to get him the ball. Desmond Bane said, we got to do a better job of making sure Zach Edey gets his touches. Taylor Jenkins, from the beginning of preseason to now, has installed more things for Zach Edey over the course of time. And that's a process that's ongoing. That's going to continue to happen throughout the season. So when you talk about just the position that he's put in, and then you talk about the idea to be around winning basketball when Jaren gets back here in a few games, I think Zach Edey's in the perfect position to take this thing on.
Logic serves that if both Damichael and I are correct, if Desmond Bane does indeed win most improved player, and I wrote about that again over at Grizzly, make sure you're checking it out, my Grizzlies predictions post for this week. If Bane wins that award, and if Zach Edey wins Rookie of the Year, safe to say that the Grizzlies are going to be a pretty good basketball team in the Western Conference. And
they both will also be the first ones for the Grizzlies to win each of those awards since Ja Morant. He's the last one to win both. So
yeah, Ja will say that's cute, right? Hold my beer, so to speak, as he's done for himself, right? He's done it himself. Bane obviously can't do it, and maybe Edey one day could get most improved player if he does win Rookie of the Year. But the Grizzlies again would be having a pretty successful campaign if both of those guys win. We'll talk about our season predictions coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you know that the season is in full swing, and you can keep the grind going with a big return over on FanDuel. That's America's #1 sportsbook. Say you get a hunch in the middle of the game. The Commanders are playing the Bears this weekend. Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams. Maybe you think that your boy, Jaden Daniels of the Commanders, is going to outpace, outscore, outperform the guy that got drafted ahead of him this past NFL draft. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets so you can be informed and you can have a great time being informed over at FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You heard me right, $200 bonus bets guaranteed when you place that first $5 bet. You get all of that and more over at FanDuel.com. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. Go and check them out today. Damichael, we talked about our awards predictions. Me for Desmond Bane with most improved. You with Zach Edey for Rookie of the Year. Now let's talk season predictions. So this is what we think the Grizzlies' record will be and what we think that will mean for their positioning in the Western Conference. Now, both of us are pretty bullish. We're pretty excited about the Grizzlies season coming up. I think that a grain of salt is necessary here before we both go be excited. Me more of a fanboy than you. The Western Conference is a gauntlet, perhaps the toughest it's been in decades, if ever. 11 of the 13 teams are actively trying to compete. There's going to be teams like the Sacramento Kings, right? There's going to be teams like the Los Angeles Clippers, if and when Kawhi Leonard ever comes back. There's going to be a team that had hopes and plans to be good this season that misses the play-in, much less the playoffs. So that is something to keep in mind. This is going to be really difficult. It's going to make this season even more impressive if the Grizzlies are able to pull it off. But for me, I have Memphis finishing second in the Western Conference, no worse than second. I think that I believe in the Phoenix Suns, Mike Budenholzer, and that roster being overturned the way it has a little bit. Tyus Jones being a huge pickup for them at the point guard position. I believe in what Budenholzer can do in the regular season, and they have a ton of talent, goodness knows. So either the Phoenix Suns or the Oklahoma City Thunder. You can't completely write those guys off and say they were lucky. Plenty of talent. SGA is the truth. But I do think that one of those two, either injury-wise for the Suns because they're so top-heavy, maybe just a little bit of regression to the mean for the Thunder. They also had extraordinary injury luck last season. They're already less healthy now than they were last season.
Already.
A couple of guys out already. So I think that one of those two will fade, and that will provide an opportunity for Memphis. They could very easily be the one, but I've got them as the two heading into this season, third time in 4 years, and I've got them with a record of 54-28 to get there.
Yeah, I'm not too far behind you, Joe, but I have them at 51-31, which is more, again, kind of speaking to the fact that the Western Conference, I think it's going to be so good. I don't think you're going to have a lot of teams there's not going to be a lot of separation. So I think 51 games for the Grizzlies, and I got them in that 3 to 4 seed range, but I think they'll be right there as the number 4 seed. So you mentioned two teams that I think, of course, the Thunder, I think from a depth standpoint, when I do these projections, I like to think of it as which teams have the most quality depth that best positions you to win regular season games. And when I say that, if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander goes down for 2 weeks, I think the Thunder could tread water at least, with Jalen Williams, with Chet Holmgren, and the talent that they have over there, Cason Wallace. Like, they got some hoopers. They can tread water for a couple weeks. If Ja Morant goes down a couple weeks, I think that really hurts the Grizzlies. So that's a minor difference. But that is something that you have to take into account. Same thing, like you mentioned with the Suns. I think, if they have 2 of those 3, dynamic scorers available most nights, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant pretty much are the ones you definitely have to have available. But Bradley Beal mixed in there, I think they'll be in that conversation as well. And we're talking about the regular season. I think the Suns right now are more built as a regular season team because they're going to have this high-powered offense. We'll see what they look like in the playoffs, but they're kind of built for the regular season right now. Whereas the Grizzlies, I have them right now for 51 wins. I think it's going to be tight. And the win total for me, again, you can't predict injury luck history or whatever the case may be. But the fact that the Grizzlies are limping into the season, I just can't ignore that. You just gotta. It is what it is, and what we saw happen last season, in no way, shape, or form, want to say this will happen this season. But remember,
you're going to make me cry again, Damichael. You're going to make me cry again.
I'm just talking history right now. What happened last season was, you remember at the beginning of the season, Ja Morant wasn't the only one who was hurt. There were a couple guys now, right? And the whole idea was, even though, Ja's going to be out 20, 25 games, you'll get Santi back, you'll get Luke Kennard back. And guess what? Those guys did eventually come back, but then Marcus Smart went down. And then, other guys went down. So it was kind of this revolving door to the point where when Ja got back, you had Bismack Biyombo at center. You still had Jaren and Dez, which was probably the most important part. But Marcus Smart was not available when Ja first got back. He came a couple games later, things like that. So the point is, not only are you hoping that G.G. Jackson, Vince Williams, and those guys get healthy and come back into the picture, you need the guys who are already on the floor to stay healthy until those guys get back and stay healthy beyond that. And it is definitely doable. But at the same time, look, it's tough to say that I expect all these guys to be available 70 plus games. But you don't know how the injury stuff happens. Ja rolled on the basketball that first preseason game and hurt his ankle. So all in all, with all that being said, 51 wins basically gets them back to where they were a couple years ago. I think they get home court in the first round. And if the Grizzlies have that, depending on who they match up with, between the Thunder and the Suns, preseason-wise, I think they're built to beat one of those teams. If they play the Suns in a playoff series, I think the Grizzlies, as constructed, Jaren Jackson Jr. dominates the Suns like no one else. If they were to play a team like that where they can be the more physical team, I think that leads into their advantage. OKC, let me see a little bit more with Isaiah Hartenstein, all those dudes, Alex Caruso on the floor, then get back to me. But yeah, I got the Grizzlies right now, top 4 in the West, 51 wins.
I think those are good predictions. Now I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit because we didn't really talk about this before we recorded the show. Postseason predictions. I have them making the second round, and I have them losing to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I have the Phoenix Suns as the 1 seed. I have the Grizzlies as the 2, the Thunder as the 3. And again, I can't be a total homer and just have them going to the finals every year. So I have them winning in the first round, losing in the second, in a good series against the Thunder. And I think that's enough to save Taylor Jenkins' job. That's something we haven't talked about as much. Yeah. If the Grizzlies don't make the playoffs, as several people have predicted nationally, if Memphis is on the outside looking in, I don't think Jenkins survives that. I think that'll be the end of him in Memphis. I think if they make it and they win a series, I don't know why you would let him go.
No,
because you're in a position where you're getting better. The roster still is young. The core is entering their prime. It's a good step back in the right direction. So I have them losing in the second round. I have the Suns making the finals, taking on the Boston Celtics, and I have the Suns winning the championship in 7 games.
Okay, Joe.
I'm probably higher on the Phoenix Suns than I should be.
Tyus Jones gets his ring now.
That's exactly right. And Grayson Allen obviously is in that mix too. So I think that's the way it'll go. I'd happily be wrong if it's the Grizzlies instead. But that's where I'm currently leaning, partner, is a second round exit, but that's enough to keep Taylor Jenkins around in Memphis.
Yeah, I think second round is where I'm at too. I think again, everything in the West is so matchup dependent. So we'll
absolutely
see. Like it's weird. Like I'm telling you, I think last season, looking at the playoffs, I remember the Pelicans were real good against the Clippers, but the Clippers were real good against the Mavs, even though the Mavs end up, destroying them in that series. But matchups are a huge thing. Like the Suns, I don't think last season they were as bad as the Timberwolves made them out to look. That was just a terrible matchup for a team that didn't have, a structure the way the Suns didn't at the point guard position. The Suns very well could have, got mismatches against other teams and took advantage of weaker defenders, but Minnesota didn't have those. So with all that being said, I'm with you. I say second round as well. But the Taylor Jenkins part, I do want to add this. I think there will be some contextual things. I was having this conversation with someone yesterday too about this same exact thing. I think there will have to be some context added to what happens in the second round before we completely say, oh, yeah, he's safe, or, oh, he needs to be gone. So, for example, if the Grizzlies get to the second round, Joe, and they're swept, and on top of that, because this is the big one to me, if it looks like it did the last couple years in the playoffs, you remember how those playoff games looked? Grizzlies are struggling to score 100. The half-court offense was terrible. That last game against the Lakers, what was it, 125-85, 40
That was
loss.
really, really bad. It was so bad that we were sad that Luke Kennard wasn't playing. It was like the air went out of the balloon. And again, I'm a big Luke Kennard fan.
In Grizzlies history.
Like we were like, oh God, Luke's out. That means we're losing. Like that's not a good look. Even
if you go back to the Lakers, I mean, the Golden State Warriors series, remember, they weren't cracking 100 in the last couple games of that series. I mean, I think going into that fourth quarter, it was low 70s. Like it was very low scoring game. Timberwolves series, even though they won that, those were some struggles. Like it was ugly. So if you add the extra context where if the trend of this team getting to the playoffs and struggling mightily offensively continues to the point where they 4-0 in the second round, then yeah. But other than that, I mean, if we see these offensive changes kind of do what they're supposed to do, in the playoffs, and the Grizzlies go out, 6 or 7 games to the Thunder or the Suns or whoever it is, you definitely got to be excited about, tinkering a couple things in next offseason to putting this team in championship position.
The future will be back to bright, and I think Damichael and I are both on that end. Let us know in the comments your predictions. Do you have any bold award predictions like me and Damichael? Do you want to let us know where you think Memphis will fall in the conference, where they'll exit the playoffs? Will they exit with a championship ring and a parade on Beale Street? Let Damichael and I know how you're feeling about the season that's upcoming, awards-wise and record-wise, in the comments and over on X, at Damichael C for Damichael and at Joe Mullinax for me. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. I love basketball, obviously, but I gotta be honest here, Damichael. I like watching hockey live even better. The chill of the ice, the slam of the boards, the speed of the game. The Washington Capitals are my team, and I've loved going and watching them play in the past. I can't wait to do so again, and I can't wait to use Gametime and the Gametime app to go and get that done. With Gametime, you can use Gametime Picks, where it's easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and all sorts of other options. You can toggle on the all-in pricing feature to show the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view of your seats from the app before you make any purchase. And you also, of course, get the Gametime lowest price guarantee, or they at Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. Speaking of game time, Damichael, it is game time almost for the Memphis Grizzlies. They make their return to the court in meaningful basketball game on Wednesday, and it's been too long, partner. We haven't had a chance to talk Grizzlies basketball preview here, at least in a way that is serious. Again, in the preseason, we didn't care about the opponent. We said that numerous times. Now we very much have to care about the opponent, and this is an opponent that's at altitude, and this is an opponent that has nothing to lose. Earlier in the show, I talked about how there were 13 of the 15 teams in the Western Conference that were actually trying this year. One of the teams that isn't trying, the Utah Jazz. But that doesn't mean that they are bad at basketball. Lauri Markkanen signs a brand spanking new contract extension. One of the better big wings, pseudo hybrid bigs.
Whatever you want to call him, that boy can hoop.
Absolutely. He is very good at basketball. The Jazz have other pieces that are going to make life difficult for this Grizzlies team. It wouldn't be an easy game if they were at full strength. But, of course, Luke Kennard, Jaren Jackson Jr., and others on the injury report.
Yep.
What are some of your keys to tonight's game, opening night, Grizzlies-Jazz?
You got to limit the three ball. It's that simple. If you go back, Joe, we've seen this matchup the last 2 seasons kind of be – I guess, for lack of a better word, a derailing loss for the Grizzlies. November 1st, 2023. Remember that day? 133-109, Utah in Salt Lake City defeats the Grizzlies. October 29th, 2022. October 31st, remember they played back-to-back games out there. 124-123 Utah wins. 121-105 Utah wins. In each of those games, Utah was blistering from three-point range. Lauri Markkanen, that's the main guy. And looking at these lineup projections, sounds like he's going to be playing the three a lot. Me and you, we talked a little bit about it. We haven't talked as much about it this year as we did last year when Marcus Smart first came. So does Santi get the assignment and you put Marcus Smart on Taylor Hendricks, the young guy who's probably going to be playing the 4 projected starter for Utah? Or do you say, hey, Marcus, guard Lauri Markkanen at the three-point line? Personally, I'm giving Marcus Smart the matchup. We saw in the Boston Celtics-Knicks game on yesterday. I mean, it wasn't great, but Jrue Holiday started out on Karl Anthony Towns, and they used Al Horford as a help defender. Now, the Grizzlies, you really don't have the same. It's a different makeup. Karl Anthony Towns plays the 5, more post-up guy. Lauri Markkanen does more of his work, operating as a big wing, as a 3. But the three-point line is what it'll come down to. Jordan Clarkson, even a guy like Colin Sexton, all these guys, Keontae George, they have a bunch of different players capable of shooting three-pointers. And over the last 2 seasons, they have really lit the Grizzlies up early in the season in Salt Lake City. Like, it's been a replay. 133-109 last year, and then they scored 121 the previous year in that game, and 124 in the other one. So the Grizzlies, again, hold this team under 120 points. And offensively, I think Ja and Dez are going to cook. They're going to get a bunch of opportunity in this game. I think Ja Morant and Desmond Bane will be put in advantage situations. The Grizzlies are going to get up and down. Playing in the altitude at this pace that they want to play at, it's not quite Denver, but it's Utah. We'll see how that works out. But other than that, you got to hold this team at the three-point line, Joe. That's really what's going to come down to. This is by no means an easy game.
No, not even close. Again, even if they were healthy, it wouldn't be an easy game. And unfortunately, Memphis has a history of allowing for teams to get red hot from beyond the arc. That could very easily happen tonight. I think you're dead on. You took mine a little bit, my main key.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask you a question. Ball. Who in the world is going to defend Ja Morant?
You know who Keith Sweat is, Joe?
I do know who Keith Sweat is.
Yes, he has this song, and it goes, nobody.
Nobody's
exactly going to guard Ja Morant.
And that was a beautiful voice. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. I'm very impressed, Mike.
You the actor, Joe. I'm the singer.
Oh, yeah. We're Abbott and Costello, maybe. We have a future in comedy. I think that Bane and Morant, especially Morant, are really going to go off in this game. And an underrated guy, your Rookie of the Year pick, the last time these two met, because I believe Walker Kessler is the projected starter for the Utah Jazz at center. I could be wrong about that. Am I right? Do they have him starting?
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe it's Walker Kessler. The last time that Zach Edey saw Walker Kessler was barbecue chicken, as the kids say, right? It was an opportunity for Zach Edey to show that he's for real against an NBA center who has been a loved one of NBA analytics.
They may start John Collins too, but
yeah, that's true. John Collins could be in that mix. Depends on who they start at the 4 and the 5. Right. To be honest with you, Collins at the 4 and Kessler makes the most sense to me, but maybe they want some scoring.
They like the Taylor Hendricks kid.
They like Hendricks. You're right. That is true. So there's lots of different ways that they could go with that starting group. But when EDC Kessler, we know that there's a minor history dating back to Summer League.
Yeah.
Edey should be able to handle that matchup. I think that it's going to be a competitive game. I think that Memphis is going to struggle at times, keeping Utah off the three-point line. But I think the fact that they don't really have anybody for Morant or Bane is going to keep Memphis in the game. It's going to look a lot like that Ja Morant return game against the Pelicans, I think. It's going to come down to the final possession, and I think Ja Morant's going to remind everybody exactly who he is. Give me the Grizzlies in this one in a squeaker. I think Memphis starts the season 1-0.
I'm with you. I got Grizzlies 1-0 too. I think John Morant, it's going to be the paint scoring in Memphis.
Right.
Really be the difference. You mentioned Walker Kessler. Even if he starts, come off the bench, whatever it is, I don't expect him to play a substantial amount of minutes, because even if John Collins is coming off the bench, he'll probably play more minutes. And even if John Collins starts, I think they'll start Taylor Hendricks. Seems like they're high on him, or whatever the case may be. So with all that being said, I think that's limited size. Larry Marketing, there's some defensive questions there. John Morant's going to get to the cup. And if you don't got giants down there, you're at his mercy. And Desmond Bane gets to the cup too. And it's not just those guys. Zach Edey's going to do his thing, at the rim. Scottie Pippen Jr. is very good at penetrating, getting into the paint. I think those are some of the guys who I think 50 paint points. If the Grizzlies, that's the magic number. If the Grizzlies get 50 paint points, they come out with a W.
I like that prediction. It's the strength of the three-point line for Utah against the paint scoring of Memphis. It's going to be fun to watch. And it's going to be fun to talk about on tomorrow's edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Damichael, of course, covering for the Commercial Appeal there in Utah. Got a lot of work to do for that publication. So I'll be flying solo, breaking down everything on the Utah Jazz Grizzlies side.
No, you fighting the washed allegations, man.
Just for one night. I'm trying to help my partner out. I know he has a flight to catch in the morning. So I'll suck it up, and I will stay up late, and I will make sure that everybody's got a brand spanking new episode of Locked On Grizzlies, fresh and hot for them on Thursday. Thank you so much for being with us on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is much appreciated. Again, shout out to Damichael. Make sure you're following him on X at DamichaelC. If you don't already do so, I'm biased. He's the best at what he does. It's phenomenal to watch him work, and I truly am thrilled for him to be back traveling, covering a team that deserves the kind of coverage that Damichael can provide. So at DamichaelC, follow his work on the Commercial Appeal. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. I am most certainly a subscriber, and you should be as well. Speaking of subscribing, partner, I don't know if you know this or not, but we have a newsletter now. Locked On Grizzlies newsletter that you should absolutely be subscribing to as well. I pay for the Commercial Appeal subscription, but I want to remind everybody that the Locked On Grizzlies daily newsletter is free. It's a one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. We are free and available here at Locked On Grizzlies as a podcast, wherever you get podcasts, as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, literally anywhere you can get a podcast, you can get Locked On Grizzlies. I am so excited for Damichael. I'm so excited for you, dear listener, dear viewer. Merry Christmas, one and all. Merry Christmas. Hopefully we're this excited the next time we're together talking about a Grizzlies win over the Utah Jazz. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Stay locked in. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Enjoy the game tonight. Make sure you're with us here on Thursday's edition of Locked On Grizzlies.